Making of iron, steel, and magnets. Steel, or we can say a mixed form of iron, is something that has paved the way for success in the world today. So much that we can now witness planes flying, ships flowing on the water, and crafts being sent to space from our very own eyes. If we consider ourselves too in this giant list, then bikes, cars, and even the rods used in the construction of our houses are something that we owe to steel. Even if we now say that our inclination lies towards polymers or plastic, it's no secret that the whole world relies on this metal. This is why we think it wouldn't be wrong to call this era the Iron Era. Fascinating, right? But how did it gain and sustain the global popularity it has now? Well, Britain led the global industrial revolution with its early commitment to coal mining, power generation, textile mills, machinery, railways, and shipbuilding. Britain's demand for iron and steel, combined with sufficient money and industrious business, made it a world leader in the first half of the 19th century. Metal played an important role during the Industrial Revolution. In 1875, Britain accounted for 47% of the world's production of pig iron, a third of which came from the Middlesbrough region, along with about 40% of iron ore. 40% of British production was exported to the U.S., which quickly built its railway and industrial infrastructure, making use of the same. Apart from that, from 1875 to 1920, American steel production grew from 38,000 tons to 60 million tons per year, making the U.S. annual growth rates for steel in 1870 to 1913 7.0%, competing with the 1.0% of Britain, 6.0% of Germany, and 4.3% of France, Belgium, and Russia, among other significant producers. This growth of American explosion was based on solid technological foundations in the rapid growth of urban infrastructure, office buildings, factories, railways, bridges, and other sectors that are increasingly in need of steel. The use of metal in automobiles and household goods dates back to the 20th century. Other essential elements in the growth of iron production include the easy availability of iron and coal. Iron ore was abundant in the eastern provinces. The Lake Superior region consisted of an enormous amount of iron ore. The Market Iron Range too was discovered in 1844. This began in 1846. Other classes were opened soon after in 1910, including Menominee, Gogebic, Vermilion, Sayuna, and most importantly, in 1892, the Mesabi list in Minnesota. The ore was shipped to ports such as Chicago, Detroit, Cleveland, Erie, and Buffalo from the railway to steel mills. Most of the coal was found in Pennsylvania and Ohio. The crew was short. Few Native Americans wanted to work in the milling industry, but immigrants from Britain and Germany, later from Eastern Europe, came in large numbers. Though in 1869 iron was already a large industry accounting for 6.6% of manufacturing activity and 7.8% of manufacturing output, at the time, the man in the middle was Andrew Carnegie, who made Pittsburgh an industrial center. He sold his operations to U.S. Steel in 1901, which became the world's largest steel company and remained that way for decades. By the 1880s, the transition from iron peddling to the mass produced by Bessemer masses significantly increased labor productivity. Highly skilled workers remained important, but the average level of skills declined. Still, blacksmiths would earn more than steelworkers despite their limited skills. Workers in an integrated, coordinated mass production environment used great strategic strength due to the high cost of errors that strengthened the workforce situation. Experience has shown now that new technologies have not diminished staff negotiations by creating flexible, unskilled workers. These were only some aspects dating back to the 1800s of the miracle that is called steel. But we've so far only told you about the iron being the heart of steel. There's a lot more to discuss, like how it's made and what happens to the waste that surfaces in the process, and more, so continue watching till the very end. We're sure you must wonder how this iron is dug out from the land and converted into the magic that steel is, making miracles happen to like the existence of the Burj Khalifa itself. In today's video, that's what we're going to talk about, so grab some popcorn, and be with us. It's believed that the core of the Earth is extremely hot. The reason why the core is always hot is because the world has iron ore in abundance. Keep the phrase iron ore in mind because it's precisely what is used to make iron and then steel. Iron ores, like hematite, are mainly used to make steel. These ores are usually present under the land in an oxidized form. That was all for ores. Now what to say? Let's carry them to the factory, shall we? After being brought to the factory, these ores are crushed into further pieces, after which they're then heated by using coke, a process otherwise referred to as sintering. Sintering is done so that during a furnace blast, the metal has enough support. Wait, we forgot to tell you what a furnace blast is, right? Furnace blast is a process in which the raw material from sintering is mixed with limestone upon a surface which is above high temperature winds, around 2,200 degrees centigrade. The moment the raw material comes in contact with the air, it starts to become purified, getting rid of all the impurities. The raw material is now in a molten form, upon which, because of the limestone reaction, the impurities start floating. These are referred to as slag. Now the raw material is collected into the furnace, and the slag is sent to cement factories, etc., for road-making purposes, among others. After this, the remaining raw material can be converted into iron as it cools, but not into steel yet. This is why another process is initiated to reduce the material's carbon percentage. This process is called basic oxygen steelmaking. In this process, molten iron is transferred to a BOS vessel in which oxygen is blown twice the speed of sound itself. Because of this process, impurities like carbon and manganese change back into their oxidized form, leaving their required material behind. This left-behind material contains a carbon percentage of less than 0.05%, which is cooled down to obtain further the hard material known as steel. Finally! Phew! This BOS vessel helps undergo other processes as well. For example, scrap steel or old and damaged steel leftovers are filled into the vessel before the molten state materials go in. After this, numerous temperature checks are initiated to finally obtain steel, which is converted into desired shapes. There's one more important method called the electric arc method. In this method, scraps of steel are put into a furnace through which electricity is passed in the form of heat. This helps convert it back into its molten form, thus causing a repetition of the whole process again. So this was it about steel, but do you wonder how magnets are made? Guys, in order to make magnets, we need iron, cobalt, and nickel. After this, we heat these metals together to melt them. Not only this, to make a magnet, sand is used to help create a structure to shape the metals. But the metal is not yet useful. In order to generate magnetism, it's placed on two iron bars and magnetic rays are passed through them. We now have our magnets ready to be used in phones, speakers, and other appliances. As Google says, we make magnets by exposing ferromagnetic metals like iron and nickel to magnetic fields. Moreover, when we heat these metals to a certain temperature, they get permanently magnetized. Besides, it's also possible to temporarily magnetize them by using the variety of methods that you can try safely at home. So guys, these were the processes of creating iron, steel, and magnets. What do you guys think if all the iron suddenly vanishes from the face of the world? What would happen? Do comment below, and if you like this video, don't forget to like and share it. And if you're new to this family of curious heads, don't forget to subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one.